Hi, this is Pickleball Terry, and I'm going to go over some terms for pickleball that every beginner should know. All right, so first of all, the pickleball court itself then is going to be 44 feet long and 20 feet wide. The net itself is going to be 36 inches high on the ends and then 34 in the middle. All right, so an ace is when you serve the ball and your opponent misses it, doesn't hit it. That's called an ace. That's in tennis too, an ace. Backhand is when you hit the ball like this, okay, with your backhand. This is your forehand. This is your backhand. When you're playing if you're a left-hander, this is your backhand. This is your forehand. Okay. Then we have body shot. Ooh, body shot. Ooh. Body shot is when a person purposely hits you in the body. A lot of the pros do this. It's part of their technique. In recreational play, we usually try to hit people's feet, but accidents and body shots do happen. All right, baseline. The baseline is the line at the back of the court, and you have to stand behind the baseline when you serve. It's always also a good idea to stand behind the baseline when you're receiving, because we are intermediates, we're all deep servers. So you want to be behind the baseline to receive. You want to be behind the baseline, and it's mandatory to be behind the baseline when you are the server. All right. Okay, chicken wing. Chicken wing is that weird thing when you kind of do this with your hand when you are trying to return a ball and it comes out looking like this. Usually results in a shot going way off the court. That's called the chicken wing. Creeper. This is a pickleball term. Okay, creeper is someone who serves and then immediately comes up. Walks up on the court, runs up or walks up the court. They start going as soon as they hit the ball. Now, in good pickleball play, a server is supposed to stay behind the baseline and wait for the bounce. Okay, there's a 2 bounce rule, and we'll get to that. But a creeper, and I call them creepers, they start moving up, which is not good pickleball play, because if somebody hits it deep, the opponent returns it deep, and they are all of a sudden going backwards and backpedaling and trying to get the ball, and that usually results in an error too. All right, cross court. Cross court means when I serve, I have to go cross court, diagonal to the opponent's court. So that's what cross court means. So when you're serving, you go across. And I always tell my beginners that there's an even side, the right side, and there's an odd side, the left side. So the even side is where you always start serving, which is the right side of the court. All right, dead ball. A dead ball is if it bounces twice, it's a dead ball, okay? And play is done. So that is called a dead ball. Dink shot. Dink shot is when you are up at the kitchen, also known as a non-volley zone, also known as NVZ. Okay, you're out there and you're doing a light hit on the ball, and it goes over the net into the opponent's kitchen, and they return it to you in your kitchen. That process is called dinking. There's slamming and banging where you hit the ball really hard. This is dinking, where it's a very soft hit over the net, usually cross court or diagonal. I could hit it to my opponent diagonally, and then he would return it to me diagonally, and then I could switch it up and hit it to my opponent directly across from me. Now, if you're a professional, you can do this about 100 times during this one session. On recreational, we're lucky if we do 4 or 5. Somebody loses patience, and they will pop the ball up, and you will slam it down the court. And that's what happens. So it's called a pop-up, and bam, a little too high, and you die. And that's another saying. Hit it high, and you die. Okay. Double bounce rule. Okay, so I serve the ball. It has to bounce before my opponent returns it. My opponent returns the ball to me the server, I have to let it bounce before I hit the ball. 2 bounces, and that's very important. So a creeper will start creeping up, and the ball comes, and they'll hit it before the second bounce, and that's why creeping is not good. So the saying is, serve and stay, and return and run. So when you're serving, you stay back. You have 2 bounces to get through. Bounce for the opponent before he hits it. Bounce for you, the server, before you hit it. And then, as I tell my beginners, all heck breaks loose, and you can hit it on the fly and do volleys and rallies after the 2 bounce rule. But the 2 bounce rule, for some reason, that's a tough one for beginners to remember, but they get the hang of it after a while. All right, double hit. So let's say the ball comes to me, and it's like a double hit, but your paddle continues to go. You don't stop and hit the ball. It's just like a carry, and that could be called a double hit, but it's perfectly legal. So that is allowed. A dribble. Dribble is when you hit the ball and it's on the net, and then just on the top of the net, and it just kind of dribbles over to the opponent's side. That is a dribble. A drop shot is when I kind of lob the ball, or anybody lobs the ball over and it falls in front of your opponent's feet, is a drop shot. Okay, then we have the fault. A fault is when you hit the ball into a net, or you miss a serve, you serve out, or you hit the ball out. That is called a fault. So you can only score when you're serving, and if you miss the serve, it goes to the second server. If the second server misses the serve, it's also a fault, and then it's a side out, and it would go to your opponents. All right, a forehand. Of course, a forehand is your dominant hand, and it's like this. This would be backhand, and this is forehand. All right, freeloader. Who can tell me what a freeloader is? This is something I made up. Okay, a freeloader is someone who always comes just after the nets are put up and leaves just before the nets are put away. Those people time it perfectly so they don't have to put the nets up or don't have to put the nets away. And I call them freeloaders. That's a Pickleball term, but I don't know if you ever notice those people that always seem to time it right. Hey, sometimes I'm guilty. I'm like, well, let's see, they're going to play for another half hour. I think I'll leave now before I have to take some of the nets down. Not too often. I put a lot of nets up and I put a lot of nets down, but there are some people who will time it so they don't have to do it. That's kind of funny. You got to admit. All right, a ground stroke. Or a ground stroke is kind of a low ball, you're deep in, and a ground stroke, you take it right off the ground. It's just after the ball bounces. It doesn't bounce high, it's pretty low, and you usually hit it and it goes deep into the opponent's court. Kitchen. The kitchen. The famous kitchen in pickleball. And that is 7 feet on either side of the net. All right, and you cannot be in the kitchen unless the ball bounces. Your foot cannot be in the kitchen. Your toe cannot be in the kitchen unless the ball bounces. And believe me, if the ball bounces in the court and you have to get to that ball and that brings you into the kitchen, you better dink the ball over and then you better get back out. Because if I see somebody in the kitchen just standing there, I'm going to make sure they're a target. So that's the big rule. And tennis players love to rush the net, so somebody coming from tennis, switches to pickleball because pickleball is better than tennis. They will rush that net and they have this big smile on their face after they slam that ball, and they turn around and they look at me and I go, you were in the kitchen. So you can't be in the kitchen. You cannot be in the kitchen. You hit the ball on the fly and you run into the kitchen, still at fault. All right, you cannot be in the kitchen. All right, you cannot be in the kitchen, and let's say that your partner who is in the kitchen, he pulls you out. So after you hit the ball, it's still a fault. So the kitchen, oh, there's all kinds of kitchen rules. But the big one is, I tell my beginners, is stay out of the kitchen. You cannot serve the ball into the kitchen. You cannot hit the line, the kitchen line, when in the serve. Your toe cannot be on the kitchen line when you hit a ball on the fly. Very hard to overcome this at first, but after a while, you just automatically know. It's like your feet, my toes start burning when I'm in the kitchen. So people, you will get that. You will understand it. It just is something you have to learn how to do, is to stay out of the kitchen. Or if you do have to go in the kitchen for that dink, you get right back down. All right. That's the kitchen. Now the kitchen is also called the non-volley zone or the MVZ, but we have fun calling it the kitchen. All right. A let serve. All right, this is something new in 2021. It's a new rule. It used to be when you hit the top of the, during a serve, you hit the top of the net and it bounced and went into your opponent's area. It was called a let serve, and you did it over, and you could do it as many times in a row. Well, they have changed the rule now. It's not a do-over, okay? You continue play unless you hit the top of the net and it goes into the kitchen. Then that's a fault. You can also not stop play and say fault because you remembered it from before. It used to be a fault. You used to do a do-over or something like that. You can't do that anymore. But I've noticed a lot of people have really gotten the hang of it right away. They don't say anything. They just keep on playing when that ball hits the top of the net, and then it goes into the correct section of the opponent's area, the receiving court, and not the kitchen, because if it does hit the net, falls in the kitchen, I said this before, then it is a fault. But if it hits the right quadrant, then you just keep on going. And I'm really surprised no one has stopped. They have caught it like that. A side out. A side out is when you've served, you faulted, your partner serves, they faulted, now it goes to the opponents, and that is called a side out. There's many times I have said side out, and people go, well, what's a side out? Side out is when the ball goes to the opponents and they start serving. And where do they start serving? They always start on the right side, which is the even side of the court, and that person is server number one. All right. All right, now we're going to talk about a nasty Nelson. A nasty Nelson. When I tell my beginners, they usually cannot believe this is true. But a nasty Nelson is when a serve goes into an opponent's body directly in heat. You hit the serve, and you could do this. Usually the person that it's named after does this on purpose. On purpose. He hits the ball and it hits his opponent, and that is called a nasty Nelson. That's done on the serve, kind of like a body shot, which is purposely done, and you hit it into the person's body. In recreation, we usually do it by mistake, and we usually say, we're sorry, but it happens. Okay. All right, no man's land. Okay, this is a few feet from the baseline towards the net in the middle area, and this is called the no man's land. It's also called the transitional zone, so it's the area where you're going from the baseline and you're scooting up to the kitchen area. And so what I teach my beginners, they can either kamikaze it, zoom up there, or they can mosey up to the kitchen, because everybody has their own different speed. Don't want anybody to get hurt getting up there. The professionals, the pros, zoom up there, they kamikaze, and my beginners, you know, they're a little more comfortable moseying up there. And I certainly encourage them to do whatever they want to do, because I don't want anybody to get hurt. And so that is the area between the baseline and the kitchen line is the transitional zone. However, Pickleball Terry likes to call it the land of opportunity, because that's a great place to do a third shot drop. And a third shot drop is, you're coming up, the first shot is the serve. The second shot is the return. The opponent returns the serve. So now it's back to the server, and he is going to do a third shot. He or she is going to do a third shot drop, because the opponents are already at the kitchen line. So he's got three choices. He can lob it over their heads. He can do a third shot drive to try and get by him, or he can do a third shot drop, usually from the land of opportunity, as I call it. And it's a kind of a lob, a soft lob, and it just goes over the top of the net and drops right in front of their feet into the kitchen. So that is the third shot drop. So anyhow, that's all I have. I think that's enough. And I have a copy of this on my website. So for all you people, the beginners who want to take a good look at this and print it out and read it again, please feel free to do it. And keep on playing pickleball. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.